How's it going, everyone? This is probably one of the craziest stories I've received in a while, so I know I had to tell it. We're going to call the subscriber who submitted the story Eve. So anyways, right, Eve was new to the school. So her parents recently, or one of her parents got a new job somewhere else, so they had to move. And with that, she had to go to a new school district. She had to leave all of her old friends behind. This happens to a lot of people, but it's still an incredibly difficult process when it does happen, right? So when Eve got to school, it was kind of difficult. She was immediately looking for people to hang out with, for people to just kind of to be friends with. And the first week was kind of difficult because this kind of like new school had very rigid social hierarchies. Like for some reason, the place that Eve came from last was much chiller, was much more relaxed or whatever. And unfortunately, like the new place that she was at had kind of all these like, I don't know, these like cliques that were really defined, and it was like, you're not cool enough to hang out with us type energy. It was like everyone was in Mean Girls, and they were all the main four or whatever. And so anyways, this was kind of a tough start for Eve, and I don't know, she was kind of disappointed, and she was kind of thinking, well, this will be the next couple years of high school for me. It's just going to be me alone, like this kind of sucks. But a week into it, Eve was sitting alone, and she's kind of just sitting there, and this girl comes up to her. She's like, hey, what's your name? Eve's like, oh, hi, like, I'm Eve, I'm new here, nice to meet you. And she was like, hey, like, I saw you were sitting alone, and since you're new here, like, do you want to come sit with us? And this girl points to a bunch of other girls that were sitting at this table. And Eve, very, like, thankfully was like, yes, of course, thank you. I'd love to. So she walks over, and this group of girls are, they're pretty cool. And they're just like, hi, Eve, like, how's it going? Like, nice to meet you. Like, my name is, I'm not going to have, like, 3 or 4 names because I'm definitely going to forget them. But Eve was like, oh, that's so cool. Good to meet you guys. Thanks for having me over. And they just immediately start talking about stuff. Turns out they all like the Harry Potter movies or whatever. Some of them had the same, like, math class that was really hard. Like, oh, my God, Miss Davenport's so difficult, dude. Like, oh, my God, she's, like, the worst or whatever. And they immediately kicked it off. I don't know, like, sometimes it takes a while to, like, because you got to know people first. But for some reason, or not for some reason, but thankfully, right, for Eve, they immediately became friends. They immediately did pretty well. Little did Eve know that they were not the most normal group of girls. And she would have actually known this if she had gone to the school for a while. They had accrued a bit of a reputation at this point. But right now, I mean, Eve wasn't going to look into this. Eve was just extremely happy that, she's already made friends when, moments ago she came to the conclusion that she was going to have to just be, throughout her high school experience, have a really just crappy time. So this was great. This was great news, right? And it came to the point after a couple weeks that the girl said, hey, like, we're hanging out this weekend. We're having a sleepover Friday night. We think you should come. And Eve very happily was like, yes, I'd love to come. Because once again, this is great news, assuming that they weren't like psycho people that were going to try and sacrifice her to the god Dream. But yeah, more on that later. And quick note, I don't care if you're a Dream stan. I don't care if you like him or hate him and make it your personality to like him or make it your personality to hate him. That's up to you, man. Like, I really don't care. As long as you don't act like these people, you're cool in my book. I always need to make that clear when I make videos ever, right? But anyways, and I hope that's clear at this point. I hope you guys understand that I'm not a big hater unless you do crazy things. Then I'm a bit of a hater. But anyways, this was pretty exciting. I mean, Eve even went home and talked to her mom and was like, that's crazy. And, Eve's mom's like, Ava, this is crazy. Like, this is great. Good for you. I'm super excited. Like, I'm so excited to see that you have friends or whatever. I was, and Eve was like, yeah, no, I wasn't sure if I was going to. I really thought, like, I really did think for a second that I was going to be alone all high school. And I really click with these people. And I can't believe already 2 weeks in, they're inviting me to come over. Like, they already seem like a pretty established friend group. I'm just really happy that they invited me over. Eve wouldn't be as happy later on, but, Ava doesn't know this yet. Shoot, I keep mixing up names. I'm sorry. Eve, that's the name. That's the name. Sometimes you're just distracted, man. And it's hard to tell these stories. But anyways, what was I saying? Yeah, so, Eve was, her mom dropped her off or was driving over, and her mom's like, oh, so, like, do you know any details or anything like that? And she's like, no, this is just the address or whatever. So the mom drops her over, and the mom's like, can I come inside? And Eve's like, yeah, I don't know, Mom. Like, let me just go inside. Like, let me get to know them better, and then you can come in. And she's like, okay, fine, that's fair. I mean, I don't care at this point, but it's a high school thing to be embarrassed by your parents. That happens. I'm not going to blame Eve for that. But anyways, Eve goes inside. And this is where the first kind of red flag came up. Eve came inside. All the girls were there. They were super excited to see her. And things were really good. However, there were no parents in sight. And Eve was like, oh, like, where are your parents? And they said, oh, they're going to be out till, like, pretty late. Like, they're going to come back, like, 12, maybe 1 in the morning or something like that. So we got the whole house to ourselves. And that wasn't really a red flag until it was like a red flag in retrospect. The other red flags that you will see as the story progresses are definitely more red flags that Eve noticed at the moment. But anyways, she was like, oh, cool, awesome. In fact, a lot of times when you had sleepovers with your friends, if your parents were gone, that was like even more cool because you could get away with a lot more stuff. Not saying you should do stuff that your parents don't want you to, but that was just kind of a fact of the matter. So life was pretty good. They would, like, watch movies. They'd gossip about boys. It was just, like, a standard fun girl sleepover. Then again, I don't really know what goes on at girl sleepovers. Maybe they talk about how they're actually aliens from a different planet, which has been my theory all along. I also have different theories, but we won't get into that. We won't get into those. But they were whatever girls do, right, when they're alone. Maybe they speak in their native tongue of alien languages and... anyways, right. They I don't know. They're just chilling. They're having a good time. But here's where red flag number 2 comes. And this one was a little bit stranger, right? They're kind of walking around and there was a door that seemingly led down to a basement. I kind of feel like this episode should have been released in the month of October, which is like a couple days away. So I probably should have waited on this, but I think we should have, like, overall spookier stories in October. Comment down below, like, if you want to hear... I genuinely want to know. If you want a overall spookier theme or more intense theme to the stories for October, I'll still have the normal stories, but I think that'd be kind of fun. Let me know if you disagree or agree. But anyways, they were walking by this door that presumably led downstairs to a basement or whatever. And Ava was like, oh, is that like a base? Does that go downstairs to like the basement? Is that, is there anything cool down there? Or is it just like storage or whatever? And immediately one of the girls like ran in front of her and was kind of like pressed herself against the door. It's like, oh no, that's just like a storage closet. And Eve thought this was pretty weird. It's like, okay. Like, not so sure why they're so quick, why someone like jumped in front of the door, basically. But this wasn't big enough of a red flag for, Eve to really think that much about it. It was just a weird thing that she noted and kind of thought about a little bit in the back of her head. The next red flag came when they were going upstairs a little bit later. Because they were going to the main girl's room, because it was at one of these girls' houses. And they were going to her room just to, like, chill in there. And Eve noticed that one of the girls was not present as they were walking up. So if there was four girls at the house, and then plus 5 counting Eve, only 4 girls walked up, counting Eve. So one of them was missing. And this seemed a little weird. Eve didn't say anything about it because they're like, oh, probably in the bathroom or doing something or whatever. They get upstairs, and this girl kind of like very quickly runs out of or emerges from the main girl's room. It's like, oh, hi, guys. And Eve is kind of startled by this. It seems a little weird. And she kind of quickly glances to the other people next to her to see if they had any indication of this being a little bit of a startling turn of events, that this girl just emerged from this room randomly and seemed a little frantic. But they were very calm, which was weird because it seemed like, why was this girl in here, like, seeming very frantic and, like, everything, right? And turns out that, or what Eve assumed after the fact, was this girl was rearranging stuff in the room or putting stuff behind a closet or under a desk or something to kind of hide some stuff, but we'll get into that later. So Eve didn't really think much of it at the time. It was these red flags appeared, the three that I listed. The parents were gone for majority of the night. The girl was protective of the closet, and it seems like something was rearranged from the room. Other than that, like, these three things were kind of in Eve's mind, but she was more focused on hanging out with her friends. And also, if you look at everything strange that ever happens and you have to make a conspiracy about it, you will never enjoy your life because life is full of strange things all the time. But in this case, these three things were part of something much bigger. Pugs! Hey. Sorry, one of my billions of fans broke into my mega mansion in the Hollywood Hills. They must have all eaten and torn apart limb by limb my security guard. So unfortunately, I'll have to hire another one. Such a shame. I liked Bob. He was cool. Anyways, though, back to the story. No more Connor Pugs IRL lore is going to be released in this video, by the way. Yes, and I'm still dating my friend's mom, and I still pee in shoes. That's real, guys. It's real. Because when I say something is real, it definitely, I can't lie. I said it on the internet. Therefore, it is truth. Anyways, how do I get back into the story? How do I get back into the flow of it? Anyways, so at this point, Eve was thinking about those three kind of weird red flags, but she didn't really think about it that much until after the fact. But they were all sitting on the couch, and they were watching some television show, and it was like 10 or so at night. So the parents were not back, and they probably weren't going to be back for a little while. And that's when, one of the girls is like, kind of like, or not one of the girls, but all the girls kind of are starting to, they're like all on their phones, and they're kind of looking at each other. And Eve kind of gets the feeling, like the gut feeling, that they're all talking to each other, either like with a combination of text messages to each other, snaps or whatever, and kind of like eye contact. And Eve wasn't sure if it was about her, but all Eve knew that she was not receiving these messages on her phone, right? Because she like looked at her phone, no notifications or something, or like Apple News alert or something, but not like a message. So Eve felt a little uncomfortable by that, but then again, she was like reminded herself, well, I am new to this group, and like they might need to like talk with each other, and I'll get to that level of closeness eventually. Eve never ended up getting to that level of closeness eventually, and not because they didn't want her to, but because Eve decided not to, as you'll see why that is the case in just a second. Because anyways, one of the girls, after a little while, is like, hey, Eve, we were hiding the basement from you because it's like one of our, like, we wanted to show it off to you, like we wanted it to be like a surprise. It's pretty cool down there. So Eve immediately thought, oh, that's why they were being secretive with the basement. That makes a lot of sense. No, it really doesn't. But anyways, she's like, yeah, this sounds fun. So they all like lead her down to the basement. But they do so in such a weird way. Two girls wait for Eve to get up and walk first. They're not going to let Eve be the last one to go down to the basement, which at the time didn't feel that weird, but in retrospect was kind of weird and made a lot of sense because they didn't want Eve seeing it and turning around and running back up. Yeah. So they basically walked her down, boxed her in. Nothing too aggressive because she was going down. And the basement was really dark. Eve's like, you can turn on some lights. And, the girl was like, yeah, no, the light switch is just down there. It's pretty inconvenient, but we'll turn it on when we get there. And Eve started to feel like something was wrong because while she was saying that, they literally passed by a light switch, which very clearly was connected to the lights downstairs in the basement. So they get down to the basement, and, they flip one of the lights, and the whole place lights up, and it is not a very comfortable sign. So basically what Eve saw in front of her was basically a circular ring of candles. And in the middle of it were two objects. One was an action figure of Dream. It was one of those like Dream action figures or whatever, or some kind of like plush doll. Maybe it was homemade, maybe it was bought. I don't totally know. And the other was a photo of herself printed out from the internet. And at this point, Eve knew that something was super messed up. That like she just knew. Pit in her stomach immediately, and they were like, "We got a fun game to play." And they all acted. This was so weird. And Eve was like, And one of them had scissors, and Eve immediately froze. Because she's like, oh my God, are these people, like, what's going on? And they say, we need a little bit of your hair. And Eve was like, okay. They came over, snip, and like took a clump of her hair. It was like, what? They grab the hair and they go over, and one of them has a lighter. And they circle around and they say, join us. And Eve's like, what is going on right now? And so Eve goes over there and she joins them in the circle. And they basically, they circle around her. They don't circle around her like perfectly, but they don't let her in the circle, but they have her in it. Like they don't let her join like hands inside the circle. And another girl goes in the circle, and they all start chanting this weird thing. It's not in like normal language. It's really weird. And the girl takes out the lighter, flips it on, and like burns the hair a little bit. And as the smoke from the hair goes up, it smells terrible. Burning hair smells really bad. But she goes on to saying, in this, like, today, and now she starts speaking English, and she's like, today we have a sacrifice for our Lord and Savior Dream, the one that gives us content every day, who does not show his face, for if we were to see his mortal presence at this point, like, the girl starts like, Eve just is like, what the freak, why? And in the middle of this, right, bump, like they hear like a door open up and they hear, hey girls, we're home. And all the girls like turn around. They're like, what? And so, yeah, the parents got home like a couple hours earlier than expected. And the mom goes to the basement, opens it up, flips on the lights, which are at the top of the stairs, and looks at them. And the smile that was on the mom's face completely fades away when the mom sees what's going on. And partially because she has no idea what's going on. And she's like, hey girls, like, what are we doing? And Eve immediately like breaks out of the circle and kind of like power walks up the stairs, is like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And the mom's like, yeah, sure. And all the girls downstairs are just like glaring at Eve. They're just glaring at her. And Eve's really uncomfortable. So anyways, Eve goes up and the mom's like, what's up, sweetie? Like, so good to meet you. And she's like, Eve goes on to explain everything that happened. And by the end of it, the mom's like, I'm so sorry. Like, that's really weird. I'm sorry you feel uncomfortable. I had no idea about any of this. I know that they liked that online person a lot, and I thought the candles they wanted to do to, like, make their room smell good. I had no idea about any of this. I'm so sorry. Like, I'll give you, you can go if you want. And Eve's like, you don't take it personally, but I think I'm going to go. So Eve calls up her mom. Her mom comes and gets her. It is really, really awkward. Eve explains what happens to her mom in the car. And her mom's like, oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry. And so Eve and these girls do not become friends. Eve is kind of alone for a couple more weeks. And that's when Eve decides like, okay, I'm going to sign up for some clubs or whatever. Eve is a big fan of like reading. And she goes to this like reading club. She's like, oh my God, the people here are probably not going to be that fun. But she finds some people she really likes. And, life has been good ever since. However, it is that awkward experience because one of those girls are in the same math class with her. And they sit at like opposite sides of the room from here on out. And this is like one of the first time Eve has been telling anyone about this experience because it is like, are you going to believe me? No. So she decided to submit it to me. And this was submitted to me over on Instagram. So you can do the same. Just follow me and submit to my DMs. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, watch another video. It's the best way to do it.
Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it, do it.